Hello and welcome to the first video in a series in this module all around the writing process. This first one is about how to kickstart your assignment, and the way that we do that is with the first crucial step, which is analysing the task. Because this is the first video in a series, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are on Kaurna land, land that was never ceded, and I want to pay my respects to the traditional owners of the land and their elders past, present and emerging. What makes a good assignment? This is a question that many students have, particularly at the beginning of their studies. One thing that I'll let you know is that sometimes students write what is a very well-structured, well-argued, well-evidenced, well-referenced piece of work, and they don't necessarily get the result that they were looking for. They wonder what's gone wrong. Quite often the issue is that they haven't actually addressed the specific question or the specific task that's been asked of them. Taking the time early on to make sure that you understand your task is an incredibly important part of the writing process. So what do we do? What's the first thing we do when we get an assignment, other than bemoan the fact that we have an assignment? We read the question. We read the task that we've been given, and then we reread it. We read it again. We check for any terms or words that we might be unfamiliar with. We might take the time to look at the rubric or the marking guide if we've been given one, to get a bigger understanding of what it might be that your markers are looking for with this particular assignment. We want to have a think about anything we may have been told by our lecturer or our tutor about the assignment task. What we do though, as an important step of understanding the topic, is analysing the task. Now, when we analyse something, we look at each individual component of it to see how it forms a whole. And this can be the way that we make sure that we are understanding and addressing every part of the task that we've been given. So when we analyse a task, we break it down into its components. We think about the content and instructional terms, and also the limiting words and phrases. Once we've done that, a useful thing to do can be to paraphrase the question or paraphrase the task we've been given. So let's have a look at how. Quite often in an assignment that you've been given, in an essay question for example, you will have content words, instructional terms and limiting terms. They are the components that make up the whole of your question or your task. We need to understand each one of these components. Content words are exactly that. They are what it is your assignment or your task is on. They're topic specific. Broad terms, easy to locate, generally nouns that tell you what it is you're going to be writing about. Content words or content terms, that's the easy part. We need to look at our instructional terms. They tell us what it is we need to do. They're usually verbs, and there might be more than one in your essay question. What kind of instructional terms? Discuss, compare, contrast. Wait for it, compare and contrast. Argue for or against, evaluate, analyse, explain, summarise. These are all terms that are asking you to do something specific. So it's really important that you become familiar with what it is your instructional terms are asking you to do. Are you being asked to compare or contrast? Are you being asked to compare and contrast? Are you being asked to discuss something? To discuss something from more than one perspective, looking at potentially debate within an issue, looking at more than one side of an issue. It's important to be clear on what it is you're being asked to do. And then, and this is very, very important, we need to work out what our limiting terms are. These are the words or phrases that narrow our topic. Our content words are our broad topic. Our limiting terms, our words, are the ones that narrow the scope of the task or the question that you've been asked, and they make it more specific. Identifying these allow you to identify the scope of the topic, how much it is you need to be focusing on. Limiting terms can be any number of things. They might refer to a geographical location. Australia might be a limiting term in an assignment that you have. Might refer to a time period, asking you only to look at the 21st century or only to look at the 1940s. Limiting words could be a particular theoretical approach that you're being asked to use. It could be referring to a particular group of people, Australians over the age of 65 or children under the age of 10. Might be asking you to look at something to an extent, to look at the significant impact. Extent can be a little bit harder to define, but it's something that often asks you to focus on the most important things and not some of the smaller, less relevant ones. Do remember, important tip, your word count is also a limiter or a limiting term. If you have an assignment, look at the word count that you've been given. That will also limit how much you can respond to in terms of the task. So if we look at a fairly simple example, and a lot of assignments that you get won't have such a simple question, but a simple question you might be given. Discuss whether the death penalty should be restored in Australia. We break it down into its components, into its parts. What's our instructional term? It's discuss. So we've been asked to look at something from more than one side. Our content, the death penalty. Fantastic. We've been asked to discuss the death penalty, but we need to look at our limiting words. We need to look at what it is that will narrow our scope. And when it comes to this one, we're looking at certainly Australia, narrowing this very broad topic down to the context of this country, Australia, and also whether or not the death penalty should be restored. We're not looking at a number of other different ideas relating to the death penalty, but focusing specifically on whether or not it should be restored in Australia. Our instructional term tells us what it is we need to do. Our content term tells us what it is we need to write about, and our limiting terms obviously limit the topic, limit the scope of our topic. Once you've analysed the question, you might want to think about trying to paraphrase it. And what do I mean by that? Simply put it into your own words. Don't worry about the language. Don't worry about trying to make it sound academic. Simply put the question or the task into your own words to see if you really understand it. You might not even need to write it out. A good idea might be to discuss it with one of the students in your topic or your family or your friends. Just try and talk about what it is you're being asked to do. If we can put something successfully into our own words, that is the very best way to let us know that we really understand it. I hope you found that useful and that you return and have a look at the other videos in this series that will take you through the writing process. I wish you the best of luck with your assignments.